$3 trillion. That is how much money is sitting in a financial system that almost nobody regulates, almost nobody audits, and almost nobody understands. And right now, it is starting to crack. I am Andrew Metrick, and today we are going to talk about the shadow banking crisis that could make 2008 look like a warm-up. We will also cover oil at $114 a barrel and why the strategic reserve will not save you, the stunning poverty numbers out of New York City, a new tax break that might actually hurt the people it is supposed to help, and a voter ID law that could backfire spectacularly on the very party that wrote it. Stay with me, because the most important story today is the one at the end. And if you find this kind of analysis valuable, hit that like button and subscribe. We spend hours every day researching, cross-checking, and verifying, so you get facts, not noise. If you want to help us keep doing this, consider using Super Thanks or becoming a channel sponsor. Every bit of support keeps this operation independent. Now, let us get into it. So here is the story. Wall Street does not want you hearing. Private credit, the market where non-bank lenders give loans to companies that traditional banks consider too risky, has ballooned to $3 trillion, and it just started falling apart. Two major bankruptcies last fall triggered a chain reaction. The head of the biggest bank on the planet put it perfectly, and I quote, "When you see one cockroach, there are probably more." One of the largest private credit firms announced a sale of assets worth nearly $1.5 billion. Instead of calming the market, it caused panic. Their stock dropped 40% since the start of the year. Other major firms lost over 20% each. But here is where it gets really important. This is not just a Wall Street problem. American banks have lent $300 billion to these private credit firms. Pension funds are exposed. Your retirement account might be exposed. And here is the kicker. The entire industry operates with almost zero regulatory oversight. A leading financial scholar warned that financial stability is always a question of trust. And a former government financial advisor added something even more chilling. We simply do not know where the money is going. Now, you want to know what makes this even scarier. Many of these private lenders poured money into software companies, the same software companies that artificial intelligence is about to make obsolete. One analyst compared it to a game of musical chairs where nobody knows how many chairs are actually left. $3 trillion, no oversight, and a ticking clock. What could possibly go wrong? Now let us talk about oil, because the numbers are getting terrifying. Brent crude just punched through $114 a barrel. That is a 48% jump since the conflict between Israel and Iran escalated. And the spread between global and American oil prices is widening fast, meaning the rest of the world is panicking even harder than we are. And this is not just about gasoline prices. Think fertilizers, petrochemicals, aviation fuel, shipping, insurance policies are being cancelled, tankers are stuck in the wrong places, and production pressure in the Gulf is dropping because of forced shutdowns. Market analysts are no longer modeling this as a weeks-long disruption. They are pricing in months. But wait. That is only half the story. The administration says it might tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve again, on top of the 172 million barrels already scheduled for release over the next 4 months. They are also talking about easing sanctions on certain oil-producing nations to boost supply. Sounds reassuring, right? Well, one leading commodities analyst said it plainly. No policy measure will stop the rise in oil prices. The reserve at current levels is a drop in the ocean. 2 million barrels a day of maximum capacity against 18 million barrels of disrupted supply. That is nothing. You think that is all? The administration has not ruled out targeting a major oil export terminal that handles 90% of one particular country's crude exports. If that happens, $200 a barrel stops being fantasy and starts being a trading forecast. Think about what that means for your grocery bill, your commute, your heating costs. Everything moves on oil. Everything. Now, speaking of things that are falling apart closer to home, let us look at New York City, and I mean really look at it. Not the skyline, not Broadway, but the actual people living there. According to the latest data, over 2 million New Yorkers lived in poverty last year. Nearly 59% of the city's residents were either below the poverty line or classified as low income. That is the highest number in a decade and roughly double the national average. The worst numbers are in the Bronx, and here is where it gets even more interesting. Federal funding for food assistance and healthcare programs is being cut, so the safety net that has been barely holding is about to get thinner. The financial capital of the world, where billionaires share subway platforms with people who cannot afford dinner, where 1 in 10 residents survives on food stamps, and the programs keeping them alive are about to get smaller. Let that sink in for a moment. Meanwhile, Congress just passed a new tax deduction for auto loans, up to $10,000 per year on interest payments. At the same time, they killed the electric vehicle credit and made tips and overtime tax-free. Sounds generous? Well, look at the fine print. You need to earn under $100,000. The car must be assembled in the United States. It has to be new, not leased, not financed at 0%. And here is the important detail. It reduces taxable income, not your actual tax bill. So a $1,000 deduction at a 22% tax rate saves you about $220. Honestly, industry analysts say the deduction is too small to actually boost domestic manufacturing. And think about the messaging here. They scrapped the electric vehicle incentive, the one thing pushing the auto industry toward the future, and replaced it with a subsidy for gas cars, at a time when oil is at $114 a barrel. Progress, but in reverse. And now here is the really interesting part. Remember I said the best story was at the end? The Senate just voted 51-48 to begin debate on the Save America Act, a law requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote and a photo ID at the polls. One Republican senator broke ranks and voted against it. The opposition leader called it an attempt to manipulate elections. The president said he would refuse to sign any other legislation until this one passes. But here is the twist that nobody is talking about. Legal experts point out a paradox. This law could actually hurt Republican voters more than Democrats. Married women whose last names do not match their birth certificates, low-income voters who cannot easily get photo IDs, elderly citizens in rural areas. That is the Republican base. The party does not have 60 votes to overcome a filibuster, so the law may not even pass. You see where this is going? A law designed to solve a problem that barely exists, voter fraud by non-citizens, which every study shows happens in vanishingly small numbers, and it might just end up disenfranchising the very voters it claims to protect. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. You cannot make this stuff up. Every story you just heard, every fact, every number, that took hours of research and verification. If you think this kind of independent journalism matters, the simplest thing you can do is hit like and leave a comment. YouTube's algorithm pushes content with engagement, so your like literally helps more people see this. If you want to go further, subscribe and consider sponsoring the channel or using super thanks. Your support is what keeps this whole thing running. No corporate sponsors, no editorial pressure, just facts. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching to the end. I will see you in the next one.